Well, this is a question that I've been asked quite frequently recently, and I guess you still don't know what animalic perfumes are. What does animalic mean to you? Well, today I'm going to discuss with you what animalic perfumes are, what does the word animalic mean, and where does the ingredients or the notes come from. So if you're curious to learn about animalic perfumes and animalic notes, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian with Smelling Great Fragrance Reviews. That's right, today we're talking about animalic notes and animalic perfumes. What does it mean? Where do the notes come from? How do they smell? All that will be covered today and more. But before we do that, if this is your first time tuning into the channel and you still haven't subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button below and also click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos and giveaways. Yes, animalic notes are notes that come from animals. So those of you that are not familiar with this terminology and or the type of perfumery were asking me, and I've received quite a bit of questions via email and also as comments. So I thought, you know what, it's time to do this video because, you know, I always like suggestions from you guys on what you'd like me to cover, and I like that this channel is kind of going in a direction of a little more education focused rather than just reviewing fragrances over and over again. So today we're talking about animalic perfumes, but one more thing, if you want to send me questions on topics and you know, video ideas that you might have that you'd like me to cover, please send that to lfsgquestions@gmail.com. and as mentioned previously, I don't reply to all questions. If it's required, I will reply, but I receive so many questions via the email address that I just gave you and among other email addresses that I have. Of course, on Facebook and also in Instagram, I can't reply to everybody. I just don't have the time. But if it requires a video like this, obviously I'll do one and you can watch it. So today we're finding out about animalic perfumes. So animalic perfumes are, I guess, fragrances that I experienced even when when I was very young, even when I didn't know the term animalic notes or perfumes, because a lot of those notes were used in classic fragrances and they were used, you know, like in big chunks of them, a lot of them. So basically animalic perfumes or notes are from animals, like they come from animals, and a lot of them are inhumane ways of using the animalic notes. A few of them are actually don't require that you kill the animal, but several do. So now they're outlawed and they have synthetic versions of those animalic notes because a lot of times they enhance or complement or you know, just kind of like boost up some specific notes, and that's why they use them. Like a lot of fragrances with Civet will really kind of like either tone down the notes of like really major pungent white flowers and things like that. So there are other cases where people just want to amplify fragrances and make them, you know, very animalic and smell like animals or animalistic. And sometimes we call them, those fragrances smell like sex. So we do have several here. But before we do that, what are the animalic notes? I've basically researched and I've found 5. I don't see any others, but there could be others. And also, among the 5, I'm going to also name a few others that are not necessarily coming from animals, but they have animalistic or animalic qualities to them, and we'll get to that. But the first one I want to talk to you about is Civet. So Civet is a type of a cat-like creature from Southeast Asia, and it's been used in perfumery quite a bit. And basically they use the anal glands of this exotic cat-like creature called Civet. So the smell is very, very intensely pungent, and it can be fecal. So when you've been watching my videos, I've done a lot of videos with guests like Dahlia or Dana, a few others, and I've brought up the word fecal. Fragrances can go fecal, and it's because they use this particular note of Civet, and it can go fecal. But if you pair it with like an overdose of white flowers, it tones it down and balances it out. Just kind of visualize this and how it could work. Bad smell with an overdose of like beautiful smell, and it kind of neutralizes it. So I've seen that come up quite a bit in fragrances, and it's been done over and over again. Civet's probably the most popular animalic note, although I think it's in competition with musk, deer musk. We'll get to that in a little bit, but I feel like civet is a very, very interesting looking creature, and whenever you see its image, you'd be like, oh wow, that's a cute little cat type looking creature. I wonder what they do with it to create perfumes. So it's now no longer allowed to use, although there are perfume brands that still use their non-IFRA compliant brands, but I think it's inhumane to use animals in fragrances, and I'm glad that they have a synthetic version of civet called Civetone, and this is actually smells very similar. I've smelled fragrances that use Civetone to replace the smell of civet, and I could see that it's a very, very similar. One thing I want to mention before we move on to the other animals, and before I also forget, the very first time I experienced civet was not in perfumery, because I wasn't really doing this and studying and learning about perfumes. And as I said, I experienced civet in a lot of fragrances in the 80s and probably 70s and into the 90s. But in the late 90s, early 2000s, I learned about the civet animal or cat-like creature for coffee. Now, if you're curious about this, there is a kind of a coffee roasting ritual in Southeast Asia that is with coffee. I'm not going to get into detail about it, but if you're curious about it, type in civet coffee and you'll learn all about it and how they get this coffee from the civet cat. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's zoologist perfumes who basically, I wouldn't call them animalic fragrances because the fragrances are inspired by animals, but zoologist perfumes specifically says their fragrances are 100% they're not using animals, so they're like cruelty free. So none of the fragrances that they have are using the real animal products. And even though those fragrances are not necessarily smelling like animals, they're inspired by its habitat and things like that, they do have a fragrance called Civet, and it's not with the civet note. Or Civetone. Well, maybe it's with the Civetone, but it's probably not with the actual civet note. Anyway, the next animal I want to discuss with you is the Castoreum. And the Castoreum is a type of a beaver. And basically they take the castor sacs of the beaver. There's the detailing as far as how they use it. They take tiny chunks of both the civet anal glands and all the animals I'm going to be talking about. And they put it, dilute it down with alcohol and things like that. And that's how they would use it. And they make an oil out of it. So basically the castor sacs of the Castoreum beaver and is used in perfumery. And I did a video on leather fragrances recently, and I mentioned to you that usually they use Castoreum, but again, I think it's inhumane now, so they probably have some synthetic variation of Castoreum now, and they would use that in order to produce these kind of like leathery kind of smells. But in the old days, Castoreum was used a lot to create leather fragrances. In fact, I have a fragrance here that I wore in the 80s a little bit, that actually, it was a men's fragrance from a designer that actually focused on Castoreum, and then that's how they got the leathery qualities. So it's extremely pungent and very, very strong smell. It's intense, it's leathery. For me, I get urine smell from it too. It's an interesting thing I get from Castoreum. Whenever I get a fragrance that smells kind of like urine to me, and I don't want to use these words, but this is what we're talking about, animals, I always think, okay, there's got to be Castoreum in here because I smell urine from it. The other thing, okay, we're going into food again. We went to coffee with civet, but type in to Google if you're curious. I'm not going to get into the food, but I'm going to tell you about it. In the US, Castoreum and the castor sacs and the anal glands of the beaver, or whatever they're called, are used in the food industry, especially for vanilla ice cream. Look that up too. Anyway, the next animal we're going to talk about is the deer musk. And this is a smell that I first discovered in the 70s when I was a little kid, and I smelled musk on a lot of relatives and friends and acquaintances of my family, and I could smell this musky smell. And it's basically from the deer musk. It's now outlawed. You cannot use the deer musk, but I actually have a fragrance here from a brand that's not IFRA compliant that still does this inhumane thing with perfume. Sadly, I don't want to support this kind of thing, but I had to get this fragrance, and I will never buy any other fragrances that actually use real animal products. I shouldn't have done it, but I do have it, and I rarely use it. But it's the smell of the deer musk is very sexy to me. For me, it's a bit of a cross between a little bit of civet, not too much, a little bit of castoreum, and some other things. It's kind of honeyed and slightly urine-y kind of smelling, and on skin it could smell really great. It can go animalic because they're using the internal pouch of the abdomen of the male deer, so it's, you know, you have to kill the deer to get this the pouch. So it's I don't believe in killing animals, absolutely not. But the smell can be very, very sexy. It could go from really animalic to really, really sexy. I've got some musk fragrances here that I'm going to talk to you about as well. And I've also done a video focusing on musk. One of them is Kiehl's musk and replacements or alternatives to it. So if you like the idea of musk, which I absolutely love musks, you should definitely watch that. Nowadays, they are using vegetable-y, you know, flowers and leaves kind of notes to create the smell of musk. It's definitely not the same, but Kiehl's musk, to me, it absolutely smells like authentic deer musk in a synthetic form. It's definitely synthetic. It's a major corporation owned by a conglomerate that has this fragrance, and it's amazing, guys. If you want an authentic smelling, I don't have the fragrance with me today here, I mean it's somewhere here, but if you want an authentic smelling deer musk, like musk fragrance, very, very sexy, I highly recommend Kiehl's musk. I think Kiehl's musk is great, so check that out. But another note that's been used a lot to replicate, but that doesn't come close to me, the smell of musk, is ambrette seeds, and another one that I have a video on the channel, so you can go check out ambrette to replace or to, you know, recreate the smell of deer musk using this, you know, note, a seed from a plant. The next note we're going to talk about is ambergris. Now, the next two notes are definitely not animals that have to be killed to get the notes. So ambergris is basically the waste of the sperm whale, and a lot of people think it's thrown up, but it's actually excreted out of its butt. It's pooped out, basically, and along the way it collects things, and it's just kind of like, it becomes like this big chunk of rocky kind of a thing, and it gets washed up on sea, and it's extremely, extremely expensive. Very, very expensive. So for me, it can go in multiple directions, and the synthetic form of ambergris is Ambroxan, and I find the smells to be not so close. In fact, not really close at all. So in other words, whatever they've created to smell like ambergris, called Ambroxan, and ambergris in comparison are very different in a way, but close in a way. So in other words, it acts like ambergris, but it doesn't smell like ambergris to me. It just doesn't, because I get animalic qualities from ambergris. I don't get animalic qualities from Ambroxan. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys. So in the end, ambergris is very expensive. That's why they have Ambroxan, because you can't just go kill a whale to get it. It's not readily available. It basically, you have to be like, I guess, in the sea or on the shore looking for the stuff, and if you can find it, it's hundreds and thousands of dollars. It could be this big, small, whatever, but it gets washed up on the water. So that's another one. But one more thing I want to say, my latest t-shirt is about ambergris, and it's called Ambergris Alert. I don't have any on me because I'm just launched it, but it's a quirky take on ambergris. As you can see, the whale poop coming out, and it's a fun little t-shirt to wear if you're looking for t-shirts to wear that are, you know, perfume related or notes specific. This is my second t-shirt focusing on ambergris. I don't like, these can make great gifts for people that like perfume or love perfume, and it's a kind of a quirky, fun way to experiment with different notes. So the last animalic note we're going to talk about is Hyrax or Hyraceum, and sometimes called Africa stone. So this is my least familiar note. It's out of all the notes that I've talked to you about, it's the least that comes up in fragrances. And this is also, you don't have to kill the animal to get this stuff. Basically, it's the droppings of this really, really cute little African cat. It's the fecal matter that's dried and sometimes even fossilized, which could be very smelly, like extremely smelly. I've smelled fragrances that feature this note. Oh my God, it's over the top smelly. Very, very fecal, but it also kind of combines the smell of urine. So it's a very, very pungent and intense. There are some fragrances that I have that feature this in very, very minuscule amounts, and it actually does wonders to the fragrance. I don't have the fragrances all here. Basically today I'm giving you the animalic stuff, the real stuff, and a lot of the fragrances here are animalic, but sometimes you can put in a tiny little amount and it can really do wonders to a fragrance. And that's how I like my fragrances, with little amounts of animalic notes. I mean, sometimes I can tolerate a little more, but I don't want like an overdose of Civet and wear Civet, because I don't want to smell, you know, like crap pretty much. But you know, sometimes mixed with a chemistry or certain person's body chemistry, it could enhance and become something nice smelling. But I prefer my animalic fragrances with you know, a nice chunk, but not overwhelmingly strong, because I definitely believe that it'll enhance notes. It makes notes different, better, things like that. And so having them in fragrance is definitely cool. Definitely the synthetic variety, or you know, if you are going to use ambergris, it's expensive. It's definitely not killing the whale and a Hyrax and so forth. But Hyrax is the one that I have a little more challenging time with. I'm not too experienced with it, and I feel like it can get very, very animalic, overly, if it's used too much. So perfumers out there, please use Hyrax in little tiny chunks, because you know, it could go really really nasty smelling, really, really fecal smelling. But you know, Zoologist Perfumes does have a Hyrax, and I have smelled it. I don't have it, obviously, but for me, that's an overdose of Hyrax for me. I mean, I feel like a major inspiration of the Africa stone, like Hyraceum. So if you like the idea of these types of fragrances, you should definitely check that out. So those are the animalic notes, the 5 animalic notes that I know about. I guess there might be some more out there, but I think these are pretty much it. But there are other notes, like an indolic jasmine can go fecal, because I've smelled plenty of jasmine in my lifetime and I could smell it. And so when you're diluting it, when you're like distilling it and then taking the you know, making it into an oil, it can go really pungent and you know, fecal smelling. And I smell it in jasmine all the time. So there are those types of flowers. There's also cumin that kind of is associated with animalic fragrances. There's costus root. Costus root is also a flower that can smell quite animalic, and in some fragrances it's pretty strong and pungent. So those are also a few additional, you know, notes that are associated with animalic fragrances, and sometimes, you know, they combine the notes to make them even more intense. So those are definitely stuff. But I feel like the 5 most animalic notes are the Civet, Castoreum, deer musk, ambergris, and of course Hyrax or Hyraceum. Now moving on to the fragrances themselves, and I'm going back to a classic from a house called Jean DESPREZ, and this is Bal à Versailles. So this is a fragrance that apparently Michael Jackson wore. I'm not sure why he liked this fragrance, but this is a Civet bomb to me. I don't think it smells as good as it used to smell, because, you know, obviously it's been reformulated. They're using Civetone, and the more you reformulate a fragrance, you lose its luster, you know, you lose its, you know, like it's the fragrance has now, at one time, was this amazing thing, and you're like kind of playing around with things, you know, removing notes, putting other notes, replacing one, taking it out and adding another, and then you basically try to do the best job you can and to keep it as smelling as good as it used to be. It doesn't smell as good as it used to be, but as a nostalgic thing, this one definitely is one for you to try with Civetone. I don't think they use real Civet in here anymore. And this one actually, I feel like, also has Castoreum in it, because it smells like Castoreum to me. There's a little bit of a urine-y thing that I was telling you about earlier, because when I smell Castoreum, I get urine-y kind of qualities, even though I get leathery qualities as well. Civet, Resins, Tolu, Amber, Benzoin, Vanilla, Leather, Musk. So this is an animalic balm. On me, it goes really animalic, but you can also smell synthetic, like just as I was saying, you know, removing things, putting things, replacing things kind of hurts the fragrance, and it's not its wonderful self like it used to be. So there's that thing to be concerned about. But as a fragrance, I think it's a, you know, a historic fragrance to have, and you know, Michael Jackson used to wear it. So definitely one that's animalic, and at one time it used to be the real stuff. They used the real animalic notes, and really something to think about when you're looking at animalic fragrance. It's extremely Civet-y, so it does become Civet-y, but as I said, on me, I feel like it goes very Castoreum-y, so there's a kind of a urine-y touch. Anyway, that's Jean d'Esprit Bal de Versailles. Now, one other fragrance that I feel like Castoreum was really used in, it's a men's fragrance, and it's from the house of Chanel. It's ANTAEUS, this one right here. So this one, to me, seems like it's been butchered up too. Like, it's not what it used to be, and it used to be a wonderful kind of a aromatic leather fragrance with Castoreum. Obviously the Castoreum was used, but it feels like now it's been butchered. Like, you know, the same thing I was saying about the other. They've taken one thing out, added it with another, because when you're doing a fragrance, in order to keep it smelling the same, you have to like take things out and move things around and replace things with new things. And so does it stay the same? No, it doesn't. It never does, because what you were familiar with 20, 30 years ago, it smells nothing like that. I think they've done a pretty good job with it, but if you're familiar with the old stuff, it's not going to smell like the new stuff, or vice versa. But there is a kind of like a chalky, it's almost like a chalky, there's a chalkiness about it, and it feels like you can break things down. It's going to break down and like evaporate, rather than like really like stay on and like be intense. I don't know, that's the experience I get with it. But for nostalgia reason, I feel like this is a great fragrance to have, and I especially love the bottle too, and the fact that they used to use Castoreum and it smelled sexy at one time, and now it's kind of like a spitting image of its original. Anyway, that's ANTAEUS from Chanel. This next one is from Serge Lutens, and this is Musk Kubla Khan. So this one is an overdose of Civet with musk, loads of musk, and here both of the notes I feel like are they're using synthetic notes, but for me, I get a major Castoreum note in here as well. I get that kind of urine-y kind of smell, and I don't know, it's like that. But when I smell it out of the bottle, it smells nice and sweet and musky. But when I put it on, oh man, it is so animalic. It's like I can't tolerate it too much most of the time. I think it's my environment, or it's my body chemistry, or what I've eaten. All of that comes to my, comes into play. So that's why I feel like sometimes it's an overdose. It becomes too strong. So a little goes a long way. But if you like musk with civet and cumin, because this one also has cumin, but don't forget there's also ambery touches and rose. It's really, really sexy, and people say this smells like sex. And if you like that idea, definitely check this one out. Musk Kubla Khan from Serge Lutens. Now this next one is probably one of the very first animalic fragrances that I bought, and it's a designer, and I bought it after I got into this hobby, probably like less than a year after, and I was really curious about it, and I smelled it, and you know, it's funny because when I first got into this hobby, like big time, I was really into the animalic fragrances, but the more I've, been enjoying it, I'm kind of like, losing interest in it when it's an overdose. This is Dior's Leather Oud with what little amounts of it I have. And this one is an overdose of Civet. An overdose. I can see why it's been pulled from its regular lineup and now moved to the boutique in Paris, because I don't think this sells at all. I mean, I think it's probably has a special few types of, clientele that want that kind of like smell of civet with leather and all that good stuff. But I could see why it's been shelved, because you can't get it in stores in the USA anymore. I don't even know if they sell it anywhere except for those stores in Paris, the two stores that I speak about quite frequently. But this is an overdose of Civet. There's leather, there's oud, beeswax, birchwood, labdanum, amber, cloves, sandalwood. It's very smoky, so it's like a charred, civet-y leather. So the leather is really, really pungent and strong, and the civet is intense and fecal smelling. I have friends that don't like animalic or smells of like this kind of stuff at all, and they just cannot tolerate things like this. And at one point I really loved it, but now I'm kind of like losing interest at like an overdose of animalic fragrances. I don't know if you guys have ever sampled this one. You should try it, if just to smell what civet and oud and leather and things like that smell like, because I feel like it's a great example of civet and fragrance with leather and oud. The other thing I want to say about this one can't be washed. Like I put it on, I can still smell it the next day. It's that strong. I don't know what they use in this. Overly strong. Even though for a designer, it's still strong. Anyway, Dior's Leather Oud is an extremely animalic designer fragrance. Now it's really hard to get. This next one is from a house called Papillon Perfumery, and this is Salome, this one right here. Now I featured this in a cumin fragrances video because I find this to be ultra sexy, but this is an overdose of Castoreum, an overdose of Hyrax with cumin. So as I was saying, cumin can be kind of indicated as an animalic note. People associate it with body odor or unwashed bodies, but to feature it with Castoreum and Hyrax, you know what? As I said, Hyrax I have a difficult time with, but here, I don't know whatever Liz, the perfumer, has done with this fragrance. She's made it into the most amazing animalic fragrance ever. It is to die for delicious. Castoreum, I do get those kind of urine-y touches. As I was saying, I kind of get like urine-y experience. Like it smells like urine to me sometimes, Castoreum. And even though I can get it in here, it's just the right amount. It smells of it, but it's almost like they've stripped away the animalic parts of the animalic notes smells. Now even the Hyrax is very tolerable and ultra sexy. I think a trained nose might find things like this sexy, but somebody that's I don't know, I don't want to say this, I'm not trying to say it in a bad way, but if you're only used to like the designer fragrances and things like that, when you put your nose on this, it's going to be shocking, like extremely shocking. If you don't like cumin, it's going to be pretty shocking. If you don't like Castoreum or Hyrax, it's going to be pretty shocking. But I could see this fragrance in a bottle like in the 70s and 80s, because this is the kind of fragrance that people were wearing back then. But fast forward to now, what they're selling at the department store, and if that's what you're used to, it's going to be a shocking fragrance. All the animalic fragrances I've been talking about today are pretty shocking to people that are only used to the stuff you get at the department store. I mean, I hate to put it that way, but that's the truth. So if you're adventurous, you're going to like things like this. If you like the idea of classic and vintage perfumery, using animalic notes, you're going to like fragrances like this. This is so good, guys. On me, it's amazing. It smells phenomenal. And I do get the Castoreum, I do get the cumin, I do get the Hyrax, but there's also floral notes, jasmine, and as I was saying, the jasmine, the indolic jasmine note can, probably they're using that here. Oakmoss, cardamom, lots of spices. Amazing fragrance. It also has a very Guerlain-esque kind of a quality. Like if any Guerlain fragrances were animalic, that I could see it being there. I don't know. It's a great scent. It's very leathery. It's very sexy. It's Papillon Perfumery, or Papillon Artisan Perfumery Salome. Several more left, guys. This is a long video, but The Night. Now, The Night is very animalic from oud, and oud can get animalic, but oud can just be, smells dirty. It's slightly bordering like civet-like qualities and leathery qualities and things like that. And this fragrance is pretty pungent. It's very strong and intense, and a little bit goes a long way with this one. So I wanted to feature this one. It's ultra expensive, but it's an ultra animalic, leathery, civet-y oud with all natural oud, rose and amber. It's basically what's going on. But for me, when you wear it, you do get the floral touches, you do get the labdanum. There's some resinous touches, lots of woody touches. Oud is a wood after all, and it's a type of a moldy kind of an oud that goes animalic. So that's what this one's all about. Just when you put your nose on something like this, be warned, it's going to be a shock and intense. And it's a phenomenal release. This one actually was not a love at first sniff. I kind of built up a palate for it. See, I'm like that too. Like you guys, if I'm just off the street and I've never smelled things like this, when I come to this, it's going to be like, whoa, what the heck? But I've grown to love this fragrance. It's amazing. And it's an intensely animalic version of Portrait of a Lady, with a lot of the Portrait of a Lady notes stripped away and basically leaving the rose here, which to me smells like the rose in Portrait of a Lady. Anyway, Frederic Malle The Night is phenomenal. All right, so I'm going to highlight 2 fragrances from one brand, and sadly, I just found this out recently that they are now renaming their fragrances, which is kind of odd to me, but I'm still going to highlight these fragrances because one of them I'm absolutely obsessed with. But first we're going to talk about the more animalic of the 2, and this is Marlou. It's now called Ambulux, but it used to be called 50 ml d'Ambiguïté right here. So currently it's called Ambulux, but this one features loads of civet. It's a civet bomb. It's extremely civety. Then you also have cumin. It has those kind of like a sparkly, crackly kind of spiciness of cumin that I get. But as I was saying, costus root or costus flower earlier, this also features that. This fragrance is so intensely pungent. It takes the right kind of nose to wear this. It has to, personally for me, I'm so sensitive to smells, and I'm overly sensitive to this one, overly. But it takes a certain kind of person to smell something like this or wear it. I feel like that person is open to animalic fragrances, but not so sensitive, because I'm so sensitive to notes and smells. This one I just could not wear. It's overly animalic, loads of civet, loads of cumin, and loads of costus. Along with it, you also have incense, some pink pepper, and Ylang-Ylang, and it's a beast mode, as I say, but an animalic beast mode. So anyway, check this one out if you like your intense animalic fragrances. It's Ambulux, currently used to be called 50 ml d'Ambiguïté. The other fragrance from this house, Marlou's L'Animal Sauvage, is now changed to be called Carnicure. I don't know what happened, but L'Animal Sauvage is an amazing name to me. I don't know if I could remember Carnicure. The sexiest musk ever. If you like the musk from Kiehl's, but you want a slightly more animalic version of it, this is phenomenal. Now guys, I also want to mention I'm not featuring Musk Ravageur here. I've already spoken about that in a separate musk video. I'm just pointing out some of the more animalic fragrances, and even though Musk Ravageur used to be more animalic, but I feel like it's gone gourmand. It's a great scent, don't get me wrong, and I just found out my sister loves it too, which is quite shocking, but she's always loved Kiehl's musk. Anyway, L'Animal Sauvage is amazing because it has musk, animalic notes, sweet notes, and woods. And this one, oh man, it is phenomenal smelling, because the musk and the sweet notes together with those animalic touches and the woods, to die for. Really to die for smell. It's a fantastic smell. It's my favorite musk next to, you know, Kiehl's and Musk Ravageur, because this one to me smells like a little more intense musk and more animalic, and I feel like this one is basically a contrast of those 2 fragrances. In the end, they smell alike in one form or another, but if I want the sexiness, a little more intense animalic touches, I'd go with this one. If I go with the safe one, it would be the Kiehl's, and then if I want the gourmand one, it would be Musk Ravageur. And again, Musk Ravageur to me used to be a little more animalic. Now it's gone a little more gourmand, which to me, it still smells great. Don't get me wrong, because I love gourmands, but this to me is the real musk here. So this is L'Animal Sauvage. Used to be L'Animal Sauvage, is now Carnicure. So this next one is that fragrance I told you has real deer musk. This is Russian musk from the house of Arège Le Doré. So I smelled this from a friend and I immediately fell in love with it, and I found out that they were almost all out of bottles at Lucky Scent, so I ended up buying it, and I love this one to death. The reason I love this one, they use real deer musk from what I hear, but it's also very aromatic and woodsy and piney. It's Russian musk, and I think it's inspired nicely. If you've ever tried Russian leather from Memo Paris, it has those kind of aromatic and woodsy piney notes. This has it with the real musk, but it also has lemons, oud, Thai oud, bergamot, cypress. It's a great scent. I use very little amounts of it because a little goes a long way. I've hardly used it. because I got so much fragrances, but I'm just storing this one away in a nice, cool, dark place. I'll pull it out every once in a while, because you know you can't really get deer musk these days, and I feel bad for doing it, but I do have it. So anyway, if you want the experience of something like this, you should definitely try and figure out a way to get it, because there are brands that are doing it, but I feel really bad about it. Anyway, Russian Musk from Hyrax Le Doré. A couple more. We're going to focus on Ambergris, and then we're going to be done with this Animalic Fragrances video. This is Kerosine's Walk the Sea. It's such a dark and smoky and aquatic Ambergris. A very, very animalic experience. Ambergris, salt, musk, cedar, lots of dark notes, and the salt is a sea salt, so that's where you're getting the kind of aquatic touches. But I feel like the Ambergris itself is aquatic, and it's animalic, so you have an animalic aquatic experience with loads of salt. But there's flowers here, and the flowers brighten things up and sweeten things up a little bit. So it's a nice contrast with the salt and the sweetness of the flowers, but the Ambergris is animalic. Out of the bottle, it doesn't smell animalic, but on me, it gets dark and smoky and animalic. It's also very intense. Anyway, that's one that features lots of Ambergris. And last but not least, this one, I recently did a video about this house, Anonyme. This is Golden Ambergris. This is it right here, right there. So this one features real ambergris, loads of it. On me, this is so animalic. I hardly can tolerate it. Hardly. They have two other fragrances in the Anonyme. They have the black and the silver. Black is my favorite, but the most animalic of the three fragrances featuring ambergris is Golden Ambergris. And I think it's just the fact that they're using real ambergris and the overdose of it, like a really overdose. These fragrances are also extrait de parfum, which means they're using a high concentration of perfume oil. So what you're getting is like intense variety of ambergris. So there's loads of ambergris here, along with orris, leather, and other notes. And if you like animalic fragrances, if you love ambergris, this is definitely one brand you should check out. So this is Anonyme and Golden Ambergris. So that's pretty much it for today. I hope you learned something about animalic fragrances. Again, I didn't want to cover a lot of fragrances, even though this video ended up being longer than normal. I've done various videos on animalic fragrances. You can just search my channel for Animalic, A-N-I-M-A-L-I-C. Did I spell that correctly? Yes. Animalic. So animalic fragrances, or just animalic, and you should come up with various videos if you're more curious to learn about this particular style in fragrances. Also, let me know, have you sampled these fragrances? But before you do that, can you tell me if you're a fan of this particular style of fragrances? And did you know what animalic meant? I feel like animalic is used for fragrances and animalistic is used for other things. And if you know the word animalistic, basically in relation to animals, basically you'll know animalic is sort of similar, but in relation to perfumery. And one last thing, a lot of perfume houses don't use real animalic notes, so they are using synthetic forms of the animalic notes. So that we've created notes that smell animalic, like, for example, the Civet, the Castoreum, the deer musk. Obviously, we also have, Ambroxan for ambergris, and I don't think they have they probably have a synthetic form of Hyrax or Hyracium as well, but I'm not too familiar with them. Anyway, those are my thoughts today on animalic fragrances. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. If you want to send me video ideas, or if you have questions for videos for future, send it to lfsgquestions@gmail.com. Other than that, thanks so much for watching today. Please do like this video. Please share it. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.